There is a warehouse on the edge of Richmond, Indiana, where the ceiling still carries the shadow lines of machinery that has not stood there in over a century. The floor is concrete now, cracked in the manner of concrete that has been asked to hold too much weight for too long, and then asked to hold nothing at all. If you know where to look, and the old-timers in Wayne County know exactly where to look, you can still find the ghost of a foundry floor pressed into the earth beneath it. The men who worked that floor built implements that planted hundreds of millions of acres of American grain. The company that employed them was called American Seeding Machine. It dominated the North American seed drill market for the better part of 3 decades. It is gone now. The warehouse remains. The wheat fields of Indiana remain. The company does not. Before we speak of founders and factory towns and the particular shade of green that an implement dealer in Darke County, Ohio would have recognized from a quarter-mile away, we need to speak about what a seed drill actually is, because this is a machine that most people outside of farming have never touched, and yet its disappearance from a landscape says more about American agriculture than almost any other single fact. A seed drill does not broadcast seed the way a hand scatters grain across a field. It places seed precisely, at a controlled depth, in a measured row, at a measured spacing, into soil that has been prepared to receive it. The difference between broadcasting and drilling is the difference between hoping and knowing. A drilled field germinates more evenly, wastes less seed, produces a more uniform stand, and in the days before herbicide gave farmers any meaningful control of weeds, the precision of the row meant you could cultivate between them. The seed drill was not a convenience. It was the foundation of systematic grain farming in North America. By the time American Seeding Machine Company was incorporated in 1903, the seed drill had already been improving for roughly 60 years on American soil. But the consolidation that gave birth to American Seeding Machine, the deliberate, calculated merger of the most respected names in the implement trade, was something different. It was the first attempt to build a national empire around a single category of farm equipment, and for a time, it worked extraordinarily well. The story of American Seeding Machine Company begins not with a single inventor, but with a deliberate act of industrial consolidation engineered at the turn of the 20th century by men who understood that the farm implement trade was about to change permanently. In 1903, 7 of the most respected grain drill manufacturers in the eastern United States merged to form the American Seeding Machine Company, incorporated in Richmond, Indiana. The founding companies included the Superior Drill Company of Springfield, Ohio, the largest single grain drill manufacturer in the world at the time of the merger, along with the Hoosier Drill Company of Richmond itself, the Farmer's Favorite Drill Company, and several others whose names had been printed on the sides of implements in every grain-growing state east of the Missouri River for decades. The man most closely identified with steering this consolidation was not a charismatic inventor, but a businessman with the patience and methodical intelligence that the merger of competing family enterprises requires. The intellectual and commercial weight of the operation fell largely on the operational leadership that emerged from Superior Springfield headquarters, but it was the Richmond location, central to the corn and wheat belt, well served by the rail lines that move iron and finished implements alike, that became the administrative and manufacturing heart of the new company. The first catalog produced under the American Seeding Machine name, issued in the spring of 1904, listed not 1 line of drills but 7, the accumulated product wisdom of all 7 founding companies rationalized into a coherent range. This was the genius of the consolidation, not to destroy the knowledge that each manufacturer had developed independently, but to synthesize it. A farmer in central Indiana in 1905 who had planted with a Hoosier drill his entire life could still find his preferred implement in the new catalog. A farmer in western Ohio who had sworn by Superior could do the same. The color that distinguished American Seeding Machine equipment from the first years of production was green, not the deep meadow green of Oliver, and not the pale sage of certain Canadian competitors, but a medium agricultural green that dealers in the Corn Belt came to call Richmond green. It was a practical color. It did not show rust the way red did. It weathered into something that looked, after a season in the field, almost as though it had always been there, as though the implement had grown out of the soil rather than been manufactured in a factory. Richmond green was not the most glamorous color in the implement trade. It was, in its quiet way, the most honest. Every implement manufacturer has one machine that defines it, one design that achieves such a balance between mechanical ingenuity, practical function, and sheer rightness for its moment that farmers stop comparing it to competitors and start comparing competitors to it. For American Seeding Machine Company, that machine was the Superior Model Grain Drill, and specifically the configuration that emerged in the years between 1905 and 1915 as the Standard Superior,
a double-run fluted feed drill, available in working widths from 7 feet to 21 feet, fitted with disc openers on the heavier soils of the Midwest and hoe openers on the lighter soils of the eastern wheat belt.
The Standard Superior's genius was its feed mechanism. The double-run fluted feed, 2 fluted wheels working in opposition, metering seed from the hopper box through a precisely calibrated opening, delivered a consistency of seed placement that competing single-run designs simply could not match. A farmer adjusting his seeding rate from wheat to oats to rye could do so without tools, in minutes in the field. The hopper lid sealed against weather. The frame was built from a heavier gauge of steel than most competitors used, not from extravagance, but from the hard knowledge that a drill that spends 6 months of every year sitting in a field lane, exposed to ice and thaw and the weight of spring mud, will fail in its castings before it fails in its moving parts. By 1910, the Standard Superior was the best-selling grain drill in the United States. Dealers in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and the winter wheat country of Kansas and Nebraska reported waiting lists in the spring planting season. A new Standard Superior 21-foot drill retailed in 1912 for approximately $85, a significant investment for a family farmer of that era, equivalent in the mid-2020s to something in the range of $2,500 to $3,000. At antique machinery shows today, a restored Standard Superior in good working condition commands between $800 and $2,000, depending on configuration and cosmetic condition. Examples in exceptional original paint, the old Richmond green still showing through decades of weathering, go higher. A farmer who wrote to the Ohio Farmer magazine in 1914 described his experience with the Standard Superior in terms that no advertising copy could have improved upon. He had planted with the same drill for 9 seasons, he wrote, on approximately 220 acres of mixed wheat and oat ground in Crawford County, Ohio. In that time, he had replaced 1 seed tube, adjusted the feed rate 3 times as his fields changed character, and repainted the hopper box once. The drill had not, in 9 seasons, missed a spring. A man who owns a superior drill, he wrote, owns his spring. That sentence, owns his spring, is not a marketing phrase. It is a farmer's honest assessment of what mechanical reliability means when your entire year depends on getting seed in the ground during a window that the weather opens and closes on its own schedule. What happened next was the decision that every dealer in the Corn Belt had feared for a decade, and it arrived exactly as they had feared it would. The years between the close of the First World War and the beginning of the Great Depression represent the peak of American Seeding Machine Company's commercial and cultural presence in the farm implement trade. Richmond green was, in those years, the color of spring planting from the Atlantic seaboard to the edge of the Great Plains. The company's Richmond, Indiana manufacturing complex had expanded significantly by 1920. The main factory on the east side of Richmond employed at its peak something in the range of 1,200 workers, machinists, foundrymen, assemblers, painters, and the army of clerks and shipping workers required to move finished implements to dealers across 43 states. The rail sidings behind the factory moved iron in and finished drills out in a rhythm that was, in its heyday, one of the defining industrial sounds of Wayne County. This was also the era in which American Seeding Machine Company expanded its product range beyond grain drills into end-gate seeders, lime sowers, and the fertilizer attachment business that would become increasingly important as the chemistry of American farming changed. A dealer in Champaign County, Illinois, who carried American Seeding Machine in 1925, could outfit a farmer from soil preparation to stand establishment with implements bearing the same Richmond green paint and the same cast iron tag reading American Seeding Machine Co., Richmond, Indiana. The company also developed during this period its network of regional dealers with a discipline that more glamorous implement manufacturers sometimes lacked. American Seeding Machine did not sell on excitement, it sold on consistency. A dealer who took on the line knew he was staking his reputation on machines that would not embarrass him at harvest time, that parts would arrive when promised, and that the factory in Richmond would stand behind its castings. This was not the most exciting story in the implement trade, but it was an extraordinarily reliable one. There is a document in the International Harvester Corporate Archive that records when American Seeding Machine Company ceased to function as an independent entity. The process was not a sudden collapse. It was the slower kind of ending, the kind that looks from the outside like continuity right up to the moment it becomes obvious that nothing continues. International Harvester, already the dominant force in American farm equipment by the 1920s, its Harvester Red, the most recognized color on the American agricultural landscape, had watched the seed drill market with the attention of a company that understood the implement trade at a level of detail that most of its competitors could not match. IHC, as dealers called it, had its own line of grain drills, but American Seeding Machine's distribution network, its dealer relationships in the Eastern Grain Belt, and above all the loyalty that farmers had built towards superior brand equipment over 2 decades represented an asset that pure manufacturing capacity could not easily replicate. International Harvester absorbed American Seeding Machine Company in 1929, the year with a timing that now seems almost too symbolic, of the stock market crash that would within 3 years devastate American farm income and accelerate the consolidation of the entire implement trade. The Superior name was retained initially as a sub-brand,
Dealers who had built their business around it were reassured that nothing would change. Some things did not change. The basic design principles of the standard Superior drill continued in production under IHC management, and farmers who had come to trust the Richmond Green machines continued to find equipment that performed as they expected.
But the Richmond, Indiana manufacturing operations were rationalized, as industrial language always describes the process of deciding which factories will be asked to continue and which will not. Employment at the Richmond complex declined through the early 1930s. The administrative independence that had made American Seating Machine a distinctive presence in the trade, its own catalog, its own dealer agreements, its own engineering decisions, dissolved into the vast operational architecture of International Harvester. Richmond Green disappeared from new production within a few years of the acquisition. The equipment that came from the rationalized production lines were IHC corporate colors. It was excellent equipment in many cases. It was not the same thing. There is a photograph in the Wayne County Historical Society's collection that shows the Richmond factory floor in approximately 1926, 3 years before the acquisition. The drills lined up for final inspection are painted Richmond Green from hopper to frame. The men standing beside them are wearing the clean canvas aprons of workers who take pride in what they are about to send out into the world. No one in that photograph knew what was coming. They were too busy finishing a good day's work. The timing of International Harvester's acquisition of American Seating Machine in 1929 meant that the Richmond operation was absorbed into a parent company that was itself about to face the most severe agricultural depression in American history. Between 1929 and 1933, American farm income fell by more than 50%. Commodity prices collapsed at a speed that left farm families unable to service the debt they had taken on during the expansion years of the 1920s. Equipment purchases, already a major capital decision in good years, were deferred, canceled, or replaced by the desperate repair of whatever machinery remained functional. Implement dealers across the Corn Belt watched their inventory age on the lot. International Harvester survived the Depression through its size, its diversification, and the advantages that come with being essentially too large and too central to American agriculture to be allowed to fail. Smaller implement manufacturers, including several that had once been American Seating Machine's competitors, did not survive. The Richmond manufacturing operations continued in diminished form through the Depression years and into the Second World War, when farm equipment production was redirected toward the war effort, and the backlog of civilian equipment demand that built up during those years created a brief post-war boom. But the character of the Richmond operation had changed permanently. It was a production facility for a subsidiary product line within a national corporation, not an independent manufacturer with its own identity and its own stake in how farmers remembered the name above the door. The larger reckoning for International Harvester, and by extension for everything it had absorbed, including the Superior line, came in the early 1980s. The second great American farm crisis, the one that this audience lived through or watched their parents live through, arrived with a brutality that the first had at least partially obscured behind the slow pace of the Depression's unfolding. Between 1981 and 1986, over 300,000 American farms were foreclosed. Interest rates had peaked at 21%, leaving farmers who had borrowed to expand in the 1970s, encouraged by government policy and by the commodity prices that had seemed to justify that borrowing, unable to service debt on income that had collapsed beneath them. Equipment manufacturers watched their order books empty out in a single planting season. International Harvester, carrying enormous debt from its own expansion years, faced a crisis that the corporate structure could not absorb. The company divested its agricultural equipment operations to Tenneco in 1985, which merged them with its existing Case Corporation to form Case IH. The Superior line, by then decades removed from any meaningful connection to the Richmond, Indiana operation that had built it, continued in the new corporate structure, a name on equipment, no longer a place or a practice or a community of workers who had spent their working lives building the best grain drill in America. Richmond, Indiana sits in the southeastern corner of the state, where the farmland is rolling rather than flat, and the light in October has a quality that farmers in Wayne County will tell you exists nowhere else in the Corn Belt. It is a city of approximately 35,000 people today, a population that represents a significant decline from the manufacturing peak of the mid-20th century, though Richmond has fared better than some factory towns because its economy was never entirely dependent on any single industry. The site of the main American Seating Machine complex on the east side of Richmond has passed through several ownership configurations since the company's absorption into International Harvester. Portions of the original factory footprint were repurposed for light industrial use in the decades following the consolidation. The foundry operations, the beating heart of any 19th century implement manufacturer, were among the first functions to be rationalized away. What remains is not dramatic. There is no ruin, no monument, no interpretive sign explaining that on this ground men built the machine that planted a substantial fraction of the American wheat crop for 30 years. The buildings that survive have been put to practical use. The railway sidings are gone. The implement dealer culture that once surrounded a factory like this, the parts warehouses, the demonstration fields, the constellation of small businesses that served workers and their families, has thinned to almost nothing. The Wayne County Historical Museum in Richmond holds what institutional memory survives: catalogs from the founding years, photographs of the factory floor, the occasional implement rescued from a fence line before it rested past recovery. The curators there are the custodians of a story that most of Richmond no longer knows it carries. The final auction of the Superior Brands manufacturing tooling conducted as part of the rationalization of the IHC agricultural operations in the mid-1980s, took the better part of 2 days. Machines that had built hundreds of thousands of grain drills were sold for scrap or cents on the dollar transfer prices to successor operations. The auctioneer later said he had never conducted a sale that felt quite so much like settling an estate. Somewhere tonight, in a machinery shed in central Ohio, a standard Superior grain drill is having its feed cups inspected before the show season begins. The man doing the inspection learned the geometry of these feed mechanisms from his father, who acquired the drill from the estate of a neighbor who had planted with it for 4 decades in Hardin County. The company that built the drill has not existed as an independent entity since 1929. The drill still seeds at a rate consistent with its original specification because the design was right the first time, and there is nothing wrong with a thing that was right the first time. The antique tractor and implement show community in the Eastern Corn Belt has a strong and knowledgeable cohort of American seeding machine and Superior drill collectors. They gather at the major shows, the Indiana State Fair machinery demonstrations, the Midwest Old Threshers Reunion in Mount Pleasant, Iowa, the dozens of county-level shows across Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois, with equipment that ranges from display-quality restorations painted back to the original Richmond green to working machines that still go into the field for demonstration planting every fall. What this community preserves is not nostalgia, though nostalgia is part of it. What they preserve is operational knowledge. The knowledge of how to set a double-run feed mechanism, how to adjust disc opener depth for varying soil conditions, how to identify a worn seed tube before it becomes a missed row. This knowledge was once industrial knowledge, held by the machinists and engineers at the Richmond factory and passed through the dealer network to the farmers who use the equipment. It now lives almost entirely in private hands, passed from person to person in machinery sheds and at showgrounds. There are collectors who hold original American Seeding Machine Company catalogs, the pre-acquisition catalogs from before 1929, when the company still spoke in its own voice to the farmers who were its customers. These catalogs read differently from international harvester literature. They have the directness of a manufacturer who knows its customer is an expert, who assumes the farmer reading the page understands the difference between a fluted feed and a force feed and doesn't need it explained. The man who plants with a Superior drill, when catalog stated, plants with the confidence of a craftsman. That confidence, the confidence of a craftsman, is what the collector community is trying to keep alive. They are in the deepest sense craftsmen themselves. They work with their hands on machines that rewarded handwork. They understand, in a way that a person who has never set a seed drill for planting can never quite understand, what it meant to own your spring. The Richmond green of an American seeding machine drill did not disappear from the farming landscape by accident. It disappeared because the economics of the implement trade in the early 20th century made independent manufacturers vulnerable to consolidation, and because the consolidation that absorbed American seeding machine was itself later consumed by the farm crisis of the 1980s, which consumed everything it touched. But there is a deeper story underneath the corporate history, and it is the story this audience already knows. The standard Superior grain drill was built for a farm of a certain size, a farm of 160 to 500 acres, worked by a family with the knowledge to operate and maintain complex mechanical equipment, and the relationship to the land that comes from farming the same ground across generations. The implement was calibrated to a human scale. The man who adjusted the feed rate on a standard Superior was adjusting it for fields he had planted for 20 years. For a soil he understood the way a craftsman understands the particular grain of a familiar wood. When the farms that ran those drills were consolidated into larger operations, and the trajectory of American agriculture across the 20th century is, in the most essential sense, a story of consolidation, the equipment changed with them. The precision of a 21-foot double-run drill became the precision of a 40-foot pneumatic drill, then a 60-foot drill, then a machine of such scale and technological complexity that no individual farmer maintains it himself. The knowledge moved from the farmer's hands to the equipment manufacturer's proprietary software. None of that is wrong exactly. It fed more people. It allowed the people who remained in agriculture to farm larger acreages with less physical labor. The direction of history in this, as in most things, was not reversible. But something was lost. Not just the Richmond green paint or the Superior name or the jobs in the Wayne County foundry. Something was lost in the transaction between a farmer and his land when the implement between them became too large and too complex to be understood and maintained by the person using it. The standard Superior drill required its operator to know it. The knowing was part of the farming. American Seeding Machine Company built equipment for farmers who knew their implements the way they knew their land, as partners in a shared enterprise, neither one able to do the work without the other. That is not a sentimental description, it is an accurate one. And when the company that built those implements was absorbed, and the implements themselves scaled beyond the human, and the farms that ran them were consolidated past the point where any one family's knowledge could encompass them, all of those things went down together. That is the real obituary, not the factory, not the catalog, not the Richmond green paint.
The farm where a man knew his machine, and his machine knew his ground, and that knowledge was passed to the next generation in the machinery shed on a winter afternoon when there was nothing more urgent to do than learn what your father knew. That farm, that afternoon, that transfer of knowledge, that is what we are remembering.